we are live. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Whiskey Jedi podcast here on the Jake Berlin channel, I guess you would call it. It's just my own personal channel. There's no specific name. It's not like a certain point of view or anything. Nothing too fancy. But thank you for joining me, for everyone in the chat. Very excited to see the numbers here today. As you can see, I am joined today by a former movie trivia showdown champion of the world, and someone I've come to find out that we have an extreme amount of same favorites, if we will. One of them being whiskey. Mr. Adam Collins, what's up, man?
Cheers. I hope you're not offended that I'm starting with beer.
No,
I'm actually finishing up an Elysians, but I have a whole bottle ready to go for the show. But yeah, we both love whiskey. We love Star Wars. We love karate. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But figured it's worth talking about.
Yeah, no, and it's perfect because look, I can talk Star Wars every day, like all day. It's just it's what I love, but I haven't had a chance to talk Cobra Kai on camera yet. So it's like the perfect opportunity. And I'm an absolutely huge fan of the series, and I can't wait to hear your take on it. But before we get into like the whiskey portion and all that stuff, I've heard from fellow friends that you're a massive, massive Star Wars fan. You don't get a chance to talk about it too much because a lot of stuff that we do is Schmodown related. What is it about Star Wars, or where did it come from that kind of just like brought you in like the rest of us?
Thank you for asking, Jake. No, seriously, like the reason I don't talk about Star Wars as often as a lot of my Schmodown peers is because it has its own division. It has its own stars, you know, like, and you know, the Thomas Harpers and the Nikki Dimalantas and the like, they put us to shame with their level of knowledge. But when I get a chance, like after the dust has settled, to like just engage with Star Wars, I get really excited. So with Boba Fett coming back around, the thing I love about this new age of live action Star Wars television is it's kind of rekindled that excitement a lot of us Star Wars fans felt when, you know, Force Awakens came out, back when the prequels came out, back when even my first interaction with Star Wars theatrically was the special editions in theaters. I saw them back in 1997.
Nice.
So that was my gateway, because like I grew up watching like copied versions of the original trilogy on VHS with the commercials edited out and, you know, parts missing. So when I saw the special editions, you know, it was just an instant love affair. And for that to lead right into the prequels, you can imagine how much of a fever pitch my fandom was growing up. I graduated high school in 2005, the year Revenge of the Sith came out.
Okay.
So the Star Wars prequels were very formative as I was growing up as a Star Wars fan. And as a film fan with a very critical eye, I don't let them completely off the hook. But I love Star Wars movies, and all Star Wars movies get a little bit of a curve grading from me.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think that's the fair take, if you will. All right, so outside of Star Wars, a big part of the show is obviously the whiskey part.
Yes.
And I know you took a little bit to decide on which whiskey you wanted to go with this week. For those who are watching who may not have watched before, I allow my guests to pick the whiskey that we highlight on the show. And after much deliberation, you went with a whiskey called Puncher's Chance Bourbon. Now, when I did my research on this, first of all, it's a beautiful looking bottle. I love the bottle. It's unique. It stands out. But when I did my research, there's a couple people that are involved and mentioned while looking at the background of this company and where it comes from that I imagine is the reason why it may be why you picked it.
Well, to be completely fair, Puncher's Chance is a whiskey that's newer to my personal repertoire. Okay. I got it as a gift recently for the holidays. And but the reason I wanted to share it was because it's a blend not only of different whiskeys, but a blend of traditions, because you have this Kentucky traditional Kentucky bourbon style. But given the prevalence of distilleries coast to coast now, this is one that comes out of the Pacific Northwest, which is, you know, adding more and more distilleries all the time. And I used to live out in Washington State. This particular bourbon is from Oregon, but that I have a little additional kinship with that for that reason.
Yeah, no, I've never had a bourbon from, or any whiskey from Oregon, so I'm very excited to taste this, to kind of let it meld. It's from Wolf Spirit Distillery. And the two names that I was talking about, they're wrestling names. It's inspiration from Mike Tyson, which is boxing. And then there's a big collaboration with none other than Bruce Buffer, who is a big part of this brand. And I know you're a big wrestling fan. So I figured maybe the two connected somehow, maybe, but no.
Well, at the same time, things happen for a reason, don't they? This particular bourbon seems to be a focal point of many things. Now, as to my wrestling fandom, I don't actively watch wrestling anymore, to be fair, but I actively watched it through basically the end of the Attitude Era. Yeah. And I'm roughly aware of who the stars are these days. I keep tabs on AEW and stuff like that. But you're seeing more and more of these creative collaborations in the industry, a lot of which are stemming from celebrities who have a vested interest in whiskey and just want to get into the mix. And sometimes it yields mediocre results. Sometimes it yields very tasty results. And so far, I'm very happy with this bottle.
Yeah, I put my nose to it. I smelled it the classic way you're supposed to do it, kind of getting the sensation of it all. It doesn't taste like it smells. It tastes very different compared to what it smells like, but I do enjoy it. It's sitting there. It has a little bit of a bite to it, which I actually enjoy when it comes to whiskey. Mm-hmm. You kind of want it to kind of kick you a little bit. But I love the difference between the smelling and the tasting. That's when you know that someone has put really hard work into it, when they have all of those flavors, multiple flavors, rather than just like one of two kind of hitting you all at once. I can taste a bunch of different things going on in this one. So it's a good choice so far.
And they're not cheating with this one. You know, it's aged for at least, I think, 6 years. Most bourbons need to be aged between 5 to 7. 4 you can get away with, but you're pushing it. Most of the good bourbons that the flavors really settled in, you need them to be at least like, in elementary school.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. That's a great comparison there. All right, let's get back to Star Wars. So,
yes,
Boba Fett, brand new Star Wars series about one of the most long-running characters, if you will, for Star Wars. Someone who had a rough history back in the day, but has kind of rekindled himself here in the last few years. Before we get into the actual series itself, I wanted to ask: were you a Boba Fett fan, or were you one of the ones who kind of thought he was a joke? Because that felt like the majority of people thought he was a joke.
Well, the thing is, there's kind of so I'm an older millennial, but I'm a millennial, and my older siblings were mostly Gen X. So, like, my older brother, would kind of be someone who kind of shrugged off Boba Fett, like we talked about him on the playground and all that kind of stuff. Had an interest in the mystery of the character, but wasn't as like hooked on it. Speaking for myself, because of the special edition into prequel era that I kind of grew up during, Boba Fett came back with a vengeance in that era. And a lot of the tie-in novels that already existed came back into vogue. And, I didn't get that deep into the Boba Fett novels, but enough so that like I read a lot of the stuff about his original escape from the Sarlacc pit and stuff like that. And I was intrigued by the potential of the character. And so by the time Attack of the Clones rolled around, I was like, okay, now we're getting like the first big slice of background about this character. And I loved seeing Jango Fett in action, because that was obviously a representation of what a lot of us had fantasized about Boba Fett being able to do. And especially his fight with Obi-Wan on Kamino is just like one of my favorite scenes in Attack of the Clones. I love the intelligence on both sides of that fight. I love how Kenobi can get his hands dirty and slug it out when he has to and doesn't have a lightsaber. Just really dig that battle. And so that really fed my interest of the character. And I had the action figure and stuff. But I kind of waited around like everybody else for years after all that setup. It's like going into Revenge of the Sith. We're like, oh, Boba Fett's going to be a part of Revenge of the Sith. He's gonna come. Like, is he going to kill Mace Windu? It's like, how's a little kid going to kill Mace Windu? Like, I remember speculating about that for the 3 years between those movies. And then we saw a little bit of that in the Clone Wars show with young Boba Fett wanting revenge against Mace. And I was glad that they acknowledged that. But to get nothing until the modern era for us to finally get to that point where Boba was reintroduced in The Mandalorian the way he was, I felt it was earned. It was triumphant. And by the time we got to episode 1 of this series, his emergence from the Sarlacc pit was more than justified. It was not a gimmick at this point. We've put in the work, we've put in the patience and the time. And if anyone's still bitching about Boba Fett being like a half-baked like side character, I think that's over. I think it's over.
Yeah. And I've always been someone who's defended him. He's always been one of my favorite characters. I can't explain why. It might be legends. It might be the way he looked when I was a kid. I don't know. But he's always been one of my favorite characters. And now to see him get the spotlight like he's getting and have everyone else kind of like catch up to me and be like, oh, this character actually really is fun and badass and cool and interesting. I'm very excited for what the future holds for the character, whether it's just this season or seasons beyond. But we're in the midst of it. We're in the midst of learning what he's been doing, what he's up to now. And I believe this is your first time talking about the Book of Boba Fett total, right, on screen?
Yeah. Like I've alluded to it on my show with Video Drew, but I think she's still catching up with it, so I haven't gotten into the details with it. But yeah, this is my first chance to kind of dig into it. And I'm really digging it so far. And again, like this live action TV era of Star Wars, just it has me on my toes in the best way.
I agree. So let's just break it all open. What are your thoughts on everything Book of Boba Fett? Something you want to bring up? Overall thoughts? Let's talk about it all.
Well, I think the biggest challenge it faced out of the gate was being compared to Mandalorian, and from day one, there were a handful of criticisms about it, following too much in the footsteps. But I think now that by the time we got to episode 3, I think we're firmly in separate territory. There are parallels for sure, but I appreciate the agency they've given to Tamura Morrison to really showcase his acting ability in this, and not even with excessive dialogue. I love the minimalist dialogue of both this and Mandalorian. There are times where there are more dialogue heavy scenes, but so much lingers on the imagery. I think most people would agree that episode 2 was a showstopper. I think just the thematic parallels of that episode and showing that Boba Fett is much more than a hired gun. I think the themes of the show are very, very resonant because like he's literally reborn in episode 1. And, it's only reasonable to expect that he would have a slightly new release on life. He's not like a completely different man. We're not dealing with a Ebenezer Scrooge situation. But at the same time, he is definitely a changed man.
Yeah.
And I think the combination of getting surviving and then his experience with the Tuskens, which has just been
phenomenal,
an emotional roller coaster as well. I think that has just like showed how layered he is. And for Tamura Morrison, a man in his early 60s, to get to star in something like this, I think it's awesome.
You can tell that he is totally capturing the moment of playing this character. And a lot of people, we have to remember, he played Jango, not Boba. He played a completely different character. And so this character and this world and this idea is all new to him just as much as it is to us. And he is totally thriving in the moment. I love how they bring in his real world culture to the character and are embracing what the character of Tamura Morrison is like. I think everything about it so far, obviously there's been some things that, maybe I haven't liked, or I think they could have done a little bit better, but that's what every
Star Wars isn't always perfect though.
Exactly. And they have its growing pains, especially with a show like this, with a character that's been talked about for so long, a character that had been sitting in a Sarlacc pit, and then had to survive that moment and get back to where he is now. And also we're learning this past story and present story at the same time. Being able to tell those both well is sometimes very difficult. And they're doing both of them really, really well so far, especially the story in the past, which to me is the one that matters the most because of that 5-year gap. Like what happened to him? What made him turn from the straight killer bounty hunter we saw in Return of the Jedi to the kind of reserved, much more humanistic character we saw in The Mandalorian? That's big chunks of time that you need to tell a story that completely transforms a character, and to wrap him around the Tusken Raiders and everything with those characters while also humanizing them at the same time. I am very surprised at how well it's been done, because something like that is not hard, or not easy, excuse me. It's not easy because the last 40 years of Star Wars, the Tusken Raiders have been straight savages. They've been these indigenous people who everyone sees as killers, as hunters, people who shoot you down on a pod race track. But now we're seeing that they are completely different from what we've been led to believe. And it's the story that we kind of always wanted, but never really knew we wanted or needed at the same time. I'm really digging everything about it. Like it's an absolute joy because it's so different from Star Wars. And like you said, seeing Tamira and Ming-Na Wen and all of these actors and actresses put on these helmets and use their body and the way their head moves or whatever it may be, something that we've seen Pedro Pascal use plenty of times in The Mandalorian. It's pretty fantastic. It's this world is so genius how they do things, and everything about the book Boba Fett is like, it's top notch for me. I love it.
I do too. And like again, like it's not like we're saying it's above reproach. No Star Wars item is, but the thing I love about it is the sense of exploration. Because the thing I always loved about the expanded Star Wars canon, both in the Legends era and the new era, is the sense of imagination and playing in that larger world and adding to the tapestry of it. Yep. And so I think this honors the spirit of that. And it's a manifestation of all of these years where, like, I imagine what it would be like to see Shadow of the Empire in live action, or, you know, the post Return of the Jedi novels in live action. And getting to see Boba Fett, like, finally get his due, but not for the sake of a gimmick. I'm glad we ended up with this instead of a standalone movie that was rushed out, because we had to kind of build up to this.
Yeah.
And Mandalorian really, I think, laid the groundwork for us to get more of this kind of stuff, because even though I especially like Force Awakens and Last Jedi, I find things I can enjoy about Rise of Skywalker. I don't hate the sequels at all, but they're a bit experimental in a lot of ways, and they don't quite fit together as much as like I'd like thematically.
Yep.
But when I watch Mandalorian and Boba Fett, I feel like I'm stepping back into that era of the original trilogy without it being like completely fetishistic about it and feeling like it can't do its own thing. So when I saw everyone flipping out about the paint job on the speeder bikes this week, I got a chuckle out of it, because I'm like, I'm okay with occasionally goofy anachronistic things in my Star Wars. I lived through the prequels. I've learned to love the prequels, you know, despite their flaws. So like some goofy speeder bikes are not going to ruin the show for me. I get the criticism, but there's so much more in this week's episode that I really, really dug. Like the promise set up with the Rancor, and I won't get into more details if we're withholding right now, but I'm just really excited with the setup of this week's episode.
No, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, and with some friends on another show, and I love that we are now kind of finally getting into the meat of it all. Like the first 3 episodes were, you know, almost felt like a setup story with the Hutts, Black Chrysanthemum, who could very well come back. We could see come back in some capacity. Really
dug him in this week's episode. So exciting.
That scene, I love how brutal they made him. He's so brutal and violent, and I love every part of it. And just for someone who has read the comics, the canon comics, like seeing him on screen is absolutely mind-blowing. So. How
like validating was that experience? Like,
it's
remember how excited we were when Cobb Vanth showed up? We're like, oh my God, he's a real person now. And then Black Chrysanthemum walks on screen. I'm just I hadn't read every comic, but I recognized it. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, I wish I had a camera on me to see my reaction, because I couldn't talk for like 10 minutes. My first reaction was like, there's no way this is him. Like, like, are they really pulling? Like, I can understand a book character maybe we've never seen an actual image of, but this is someone who has massive history with a lot of characters we know, including Boba. And to bring him in to a territory we've seen him in before, with characters we've seen him before, it's not only a complete shock, but one of the most brilliant moves I've seen them make, period, with Star Wars, because he fits perfect without us ever realizing that he's the perfect fit.
Yeah. There's so much of that consideration that goes into this. I love that they do their research and they collaborate with other creators and they look at a list of what they already have. And they create plenty of new characters, which is awesome. But you have like occasionally picking out these characters that have not made it to the live action threshold yet and giving us that. It's not only new for casual fans, it's so exciting for those of us who pay attention.
Yep.
And it's a great example of how you can do both. You don't have to be strictly fan service and inside baseball. You can throw this stuff at people and have casual fans enjoy the ride. And then those of us who get it are just that much more gleeful, you know?
Just awing at the situation of everything that is happening. All right, so let's get into some specifics, details. Is there something that you really want to talk about the most out of anything Book of Boba Fett so far?
Well, the main thing is, as much as I'm enjoying the show, I'd like to see him go off world. And okay. I like, not like for this, just arbitrarily, it needs to be for a good reason.
Yeah. A certain story or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I'm not upset with the location of Tatooine. I love this mob, crime epic feel that I'm getting to this. I'm getting like flashbacks to, some of my favorite books that follow a similar style, but I need to see him get in his ship and go do something, at some point.
That's
I want to see more of, the Kamino flashbacks. They've shown us basically the same images a few times. And I'm like, I get it. I get that he had a troubled childhood, but like, are you going to give me more? Yeah. Like, could you give me something of like young Boba after Jango's dead and him processing how he feels about Mace Windu? Maybe, like, I don't know, like something that kind of that pays off those flashbacks a little bit. I'm curious about that.
Do you think there's a chance that the flashbacks lead him to possibly going to look at Kamino? And maybe him never being there since he left, and like,
oh, dude, if he goes to Kamino in this era, I will lose my freaking mind.
I think there's a high chance that the flashbacks, because we've seen flashbacks in all 3 episodes, and each time they're longer. There's more of it, and I feel like there's a chance that it's going to lead him to leaving Tatooine and maybe going to look at it or check it out.
I would be really interested in that as long as there's a good reason. I don't feel like you can throw Kamino in our face and just have it be.
It's for a reason.
Yeah, you can't just be like, we get it that that's where he grew up, but what did he do after Geonosis? And we know because of Clone Wars, like he ended up with like a ragtag group of weirdos. But like, I want to see more of young Boba. I don't know that there's a way you could give us Daniel Logan at his current age and make it believable as the same character. So I think we might have to let that go, but maybe a de-aged Tamara Morrison. If you introduce Rex, played by Tamara Morrison, in the show, I will also lose my mind.
I will. That's the one thing that I'll freak out about if Captain Rex shows up. like, yeah, that's a moment that I will be very, very
I think we're going to get him eventually, but I think Tamara Morrison's like one thing at a time. One thing at a time.
What would be interesting, though, is if we did see a young Boba, the idea of him possibly never taking his helmet off once he puts that official suit on of the Jango, he repaints it, he kind of gets it back to a Mandalorian feel. Does he take his helmet off in all of those years like a classic Mandalorian would, or does he actually take it off and we would see his face? If you didn't take it off, then you can have Tamir Morrison play him if you wanted to, or Daniel Logan for that matter.
You could do that. I would definitely like to see the paint job of Jango's armor happen at some point.
Him repainting over, that would be so cool.
I want to see how that armor changed. Because finding out that it was the same armor in Mandalorian, I know it had been alluded to in canon, but like knowing officially it's the same armor was so exciting. So like, I want to see how that happened. I would love to see a flashback to a scene from the original trilogy from Boba's perspective. So like, if it's in the carbon chamber.
Oh yeah.
That scene would be cool. Or we've seen enough of Jabba's palace in this show, so I would love to see something from Boba's perspective, either in between the prequels and originals or during the originals, just to give us a little more of that flavor.
I would love that, and I would also lose my mind.
Mm-hmm. And and I think all of us would be fine with, like, if it's just one scene, a DH to Tamara Morrison's fine, especially after Aquaman, where that de-aging was so goofy. Like, I know Lucasfilm would do a better job. So
yeah, 100%. Real quick before we move on, we do have a comment from one special guest here, a former guest on the show, Mr. Sean Soley. Jake, I'm glad you finally got a decent guest on the show instead of Riff Raff. Oh, thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
Toss a coin to your Sully. Now, I got to say, Sully and I need to come on here whenever you finally catch up on The Witcher, because
I'm done. I caught up.
Okay, we can't derail this show right now, but God, I have thoughts on The Witcher, and
I need to be educated on The Witcher because I never played the games.
Okay, well, there's games, there's books, and my recent binge of the show got me playing the game again.
Oh man!
And I know Sully's playing the game, and I'm just having a blast with it. It's great. And I'm halfway through Wheel of Time, the show, by the way. I heard you were watching that.
Yep, we geeked out about that as well. He was also educating me on that as well.
I'm digging Wheel of Time. I'm impressed with how, like, it is a gorgeous looking show.
It is. It is.
Like,
Prime does some really, really good stuff.
Yeah. So it also gets me really excited about their Lord of the Rings show. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing here. But yeah, it's going to get me back into the Wheel of Time book. So I just got to read 16,000 page books. It's fine.
We'll definitely schedule a show where you two just sit here and geek out, and I'll listen and take notes. So
let's do Wheel of Time and Witcher doubleheader.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Any final thoughts on Boba Fett? Maybe where it's headed, what you're excited about the most before we get into some karate?
Well, I enjoy this part of these live action shows where we really don't know. That's the most exciting aspect. You have speculation, but a limited amount of speculation because it's week to week. Mm-hmm. And so people don't get carried away. And then I like having episodes like this week that are more set up and a couple goofy scenes, because it makes the episodes like last week really, really pop. And I am confident that we're going to get at least 2 more like jaw droppers this season.
I think we'll get some big old reveals at some point for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So more Hutts, more Wookiees, maybe a lightsaber because they can't help themselves. I wouldn't be offended by it.
It depends on the situation, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the Hutts. Do you think that they'll be back?
First of all, I love these Hutts. I love their attitude.
The idea of the twins is very unique.
I love how these two are just like, well, we don't really want to this is too much work. Let's go. Yeah.
Well, I love that they tried to kill Boba, and then immediately is like, oh, it didn't work. We're going to come apologize now and give you the best gift you've ever received.
I think we're in for a huge treat with this Rancor thing.
He's riding the Rancor, right? He's got it.
I mean, it's going to be... I mean, if you want to get respect in Mos Espa, can you imagine riding a Rancor around town?
One who is being trained by Danny Trejo, keep in mind.
Yeah. If they name the Rancor Machete, I'm going to lose it.
I don't agree with the name, but a lot of people online are saying that he might name it Django.
I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah. So it might feel a little cheesy to me, but I also would understand why he would do that.
Mm-hmm. So. What if he names it Mace?
Oh God. Then he would have to kill it.
And I will say this, the only thing that would shock me more than anything is old man Windu showing up. I don't know if I could handle that. I think that'd be a big sell. That'd be a It'd be tough.
Where's he been in 30 years?
Yeah. But we'll see.
Yeah, there's still a lot to happen, and we only have 4 episodes left. Hard to believe. So, all right. Well, we'll definitely get back to Book of Boba Fett another time. I'm definitely gonna have you back before the season ends. But I want to talk some Cobra Kai with you.
Oh, I'm here for it.
I haven't had a chance to talk this show, and I've been on this show since day one. I was a YouTube watcher. I transferred over to Netflix. And so let's just break it wide open and your thoughts on season 4 before we get to some details, characters, stuff like that.
The thing I love about Cobra Kai is like in the Schmodown off season, I binge TV like crazy. I catch up on all my TV. Wheel of Time's my last show I was trying to catch up on before I get back to like only movies, right? So I binge a lot of TV, but Cobra Kai is a special kind of binge because like I start it and then it's over and I don't know how it happened. Like it's because the episodes are like a half hour.
Yep.
And it's also because it's half comedy. And so it's got the excitement of a drama, but it's got the casual, comfortable feel of like The Office and Parks and Recreation to me. So like, I'm not saying it has the same sense of humor. I'm not trying to say it's got the same sense of humor, but it's got that comfort food feel that those shows do. You know what I mean? So like to have that those things combined is such a unique thing that I can't think of another show that's achieved that, because Cobra Kai is very hyperbolic. It's incredibly heightened, incredibly unrealistic. That's why we tune into it. And yet it still taps into genuine human emotion. And a lot of the emotional scenes feel incredibly earned. So as a dad, my heartstrings were getting tugged all season. The stuff between Johnny and Robbie and Miguel kills me. The thing I love about the show still is, as much as I love that Daniel LaRusso is a character in it, and I think they've brought additional layers to him, I still am more hooked on Johnny's journey.
Same.
Because I feel like he's going through more of an evolution than Daniel is. I'm glad Daniel's on the show, and I think Ralph Macchio is having he's having a great time, and I'm here for it. But Johnny continues to be the heart of the show for me because he's so flawed. He's such a mess, and he keeps wanting to like change, but he can't quite do it because he's he's got a ceiling. Yeah. And I love that about him. I really do.
Yeah, so the way that I've been able to describe this to people who have not watched it is I simply say the show has no right being as good as it is.
Yeah.
It has absolutely no right being as good as it is. And you're right, it's heightened, it's this version of a karate universe that is so crazy, but we just keep wanting more of it. I agree with everything you said about Daniel and Johnny. I always have loved the Johnny side of it more than the Daniel side of it. That's because Daniel has always felt like the same exact character through everything. He has never changed. And it seems like he might be getting there after this season, but he has always kind of been like this straight leveled guy on the same path where Johnny has done this, and then he's kind of done this, and then dipped a little bit, then gone back up. And that's the story that I care about a lot more than the Daniel stuff, where I love seeing Daniel LaRusso. He's the former karate champion. He's Mr. Miyagi's, apprentice. Like that's just what he is. But Johnny's story, the way that they've been able to put him in the forefront and kind of put everything through his eyes, has been a much more interesting take than it would be if it was on Daniel's side. For
sure. And the thing too that I appreciate this season started to tackle Daniel being a little too one note. As much as I love having him as a character, like I adore Mr. Miyagi, but if I had to hear one more uninterrupted monologue about Mr. Miyagi with the music, it's become like a bit of a gag on the show in a great way. And then for his own son to be like, "Shut up!" He's like, "I'm so sick of this."
Yep.
I was like, "That's good writing."
That's all of us. That is all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I love Mr. Miyagi, but it's like, Daniel, dude, like other stuff is happening. Like you should strive for Mr. Miyagi's goals, but I loved seeing the things Johnny was putting him through. Like when they were teaching each other's karate. I love that with Johnny, like the things he does he would never run a dojo again. Like the things he does
run on fire and coal. You like that's
and that's the adults.
Yeah.
The things he's done to the children, like
jumping over a building.
Yeah, it is so problematic, and yet the show gets away with it because, like, it sets the terms really early on. Like season 1, you know what kind of show this is. You know that Johnny is an exaggeration of the high school wash up, who doesn't really know where he stands these days, and I just like the way the show continues to evolve and bringing back characters the way it has. It's earned that, like I talked about that with Boba Fett. Cobra Kai has earned it in spades because, like, you look back at the original movies and this show has boosted the profile of even the original movies. The first Karate Kid is, of course, like celebrated.
Yeah.
But the sequels are now like eyes on the sequels like never before.
They're like the new prequels.
Yeah, and I've always loved Karate Kid 2 and 3, and honestly, I want Hilary Swank to be on this show at some point.
Me too.
Yes,
me too. I want. Oh, we need her. She needs to be here at some capacity.
What's she got to do? A sequel to The Hunt? I doubt it. So like, let's do Cobra Kai, Hilary. What do you? I mean, like, don't act like you're too good for it, okay?
Yes.
Like.
Agreed. I think we probably know where it's headed next with a Mike Barnes appearance, I would say.
Oh God. Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of where it's headed, which would then leave Hilary Swank for something next, if that's the case. But as far as all of that side with Cobra Kai, what did you think of the return of Terry Silver?
I'm obsessed.
And the dynamic between those two. I mean, So I wasn't sure how it was going to go. Like, honestly, I didn't know how it was going to work, the relationship between the two of them, because we know what Terry's like, but all these years have passed. And I thought it was done absolutely brilliant. And then the ending was like the perfect cherry on top of everything. I love the ending to pieces.
Me too. And I love that they continue to have this theme play out of monsters of your own making.
Yes.
It's a cyclical thing because John Kreese created Johnny Lawrence. Johnny Lawrence tried to move past the bad stuff of Cobra Kai and reinvent it. That brings Kreese back. Johnny goes off and does his own thing. Then Kreese brings in Terry Silver, and now we're back here. And where's Kreese? Where's that leave Kreese? Oh my God, do I love the flashback stuff in Vietnam because you hear about Vietnam so much in the first 3 Karate Kids, especially in part 3. And I'm like, I can't even imagine these two psychos in Vietnam. And to get that background and get those layers to it.
Yeah.
Thomas Ian Griffith, Martin Cove's doing great. I love Martin Cove. He's delightful. He's a great villain, but he's very arch. Thomas Ian Griffith is so layered.
He's a psychopath.
He's a psychopath, but he's also emotional.
Yeah. And
that scene when Kreese says, "Remember who saved your ass," and he has Terry in that moment, and Terry realizes John still has the power in their relationship, and you just see the tears welling up in his eyes because he doesn't know what to do, and that's an actor. Like that guy, like where has Thomas Ian Griffith been? Because like he's been on TV mostly, and he played the main vampire in John Carpenter's Vampires, which I love reminding people of.
Got it.
Yeah, like if you need more Thomas Ian Griffith, go watch John Carpenter's Vampires. But Karate Kid Part 3, as ridiculous as he is, he gives a great performance in that movie. It's very, very over the top. But like he's so entertaining, you can't take your eyes away from him in that movie. Yeah. And he's as tall as a giant, so like just seeing his height in this, and that he's still physically imposing. And then that scene where he kicks Johnny's ass, I'm like, oh God, we got to get more showdowns in season 5.
It seems like it's headed that direction. Obviously, the question of what happens with Johnny with Miguel going off is a big question. that a lot of people are asking. I know that is probably a move because the actor who plays Miguel, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name, he'll be filming Blue Beetle. He's going to be playing Blue Beetle for the DC movie. So that could be weighing into it. But I feel like stepping away from that story might be a little bit of a mistake because they've kind of been the heart of it all. Like their story was everything from the get-go. And speaking of Miguel, that tragic moment during that fight, I couldn't handle when he got hurt. That I lost it because I had no idea that was going to be coming. No, and
that got me too. It really got me. But I will say the follow-up in the following episode, it's not that it negated that for me, but like they had me there, right? They really had me in that moment. So for it to not be as, like as troublesome as we thought it might be, that I'm not saying it ruined it at all, but like I was a little surprised about the quick turnaround.
That he wasn't as hurt maybe as he should have been?
Yeah. Like enough that like he was like stunned and didn't want to like go forward. But I'm as much as I love the show, little moments like that, I'm like, okay, you're messing with me, show. It's fine. You can mess with me. I think you're right. Like he might need to step away from the show, but I think they've mostly filmed season 5 already.
That's right. So, now that you say that is correct.
But I think the following season, I think they're going to start shooting season 6 soon, and he might be gone for that. So we can only speculate.
I think there's at some point one of these characters is probably going to have to leave, right? Like not every character stays on TV series forever, and we don't know how long Cobra Kai is going to be lasting. Miguel's gone through a lot, and the stuff with his father next season might be even more so, and we don't know what his karate future is holding. But outside of Miguel, I mean, was there a character that really kind of brought you in with what was handling, whether it was Sam, Robbie, maybe Hawk and his storyline? Any character that kind of stood out?
I mean, well, obviously Terry. And can't wait to see more from that character. I really liked Hawk's arc this season because I was a little worn out with the tough guy thing. And just like how mean he was in season 3.
It was brutal. It was brutal.
Yeah, I'm like, he's a criminal. Okay, he's a criminal. But yeah, I loved that the final showdown in the boys tournament was him and Robbie. I think that was perfect because we've seen Miguel and Robbie. We get it. I think allowing Eli to reach that new height as a character, he's earned it because that actor has put in the work.
He's great.
He is so good at the karate.
Yeah.
And he's also just a really, really talented young actor. So I was really excited to see Eli like step into the spotlight this season. I'm really, really pumped that Chosen is back. Like, and he's going to be back full time for the next season. I think it's ridiculous, but that's why I love the show. Like, why did you come over from Japan to like get in on this dojo beef? But it's fine. I don't care. I'm just glad he's in it. And I love that actor. I think that Okinawa was like 1 or 2 episodes last season.
I thought it was so well done.
So good. So I'm excited to see what happens with Chosen. I continue to think Amanda is one of the most underrated characters in the show. Daniel's wife.
She had more to do. I really do.
Yeah, like she had a little more this season, but I want her to get to be more of a person of action, who shapes the plot line. Just because I think she's very talented and she's an interesting character. And I remember when the show started, I remember thinking when this started on YouTube that the show was going to have the edges were going to be too soft. And now here we are on Netflix and they're dropping F-bombs once in a while. And I love the F-bombs because they're not excessive and they use them at just the right moments. And I love that Amanda has really continued to find her edge as a character. And I know she has a darkness in her. I know she wants to punch somebody. I loved her confronting Kreese last season.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed her story arc with Tori. I'm glad that Tori and Sam have evolved a little bit. Like, I think we're not good. I think we're done with like the traditional rivalry with them. I think they'll continue to battle, but not in the way we've seen. I think that is played out. You know, we don't need to see them with chips on their shoulders anymore.
Yeah, I think the chips are all gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though Tori did win, I think Sam will kind of move past it. It seems like her relationship with Johnny is possibly helping that, which I thought was a great dynamic. And seeing her kind of take two sides of the coin, and then at the very end, when she looks over both shoulders towards the both of them, great come around moment for that character. But I agree with you on Amanda. I think Amanda is severely underrated. I loved her role in season 3. And even though we didn't get to see a lot of her in season 4, it was very important. I'm interested in seeing where it goes because she could see as a mom that Tori did hurt her daughter in that final match, and maybe that evolves into something. But I also love her relationship with Daniel and how she can just tell Daniel point blank, like, no, sorry, you're wrong. Like, this isn't what's supposed to be happening. She kind of has him on a leash, if you will. And she's a great character and a foil to him in a household that is kind of crazy with those 2 kids. I mean, we learned this season that the son is even a little bit more crazier than Sam.
I'm so glad he's a real character now, though. For God's sake,
the video game, right?
Like, that kid got the short shrift for 3 seasons, and he's a talented actor. He's good. He's good. I really like him, and I like that. Like, even though he was being bullied into bullying, it still doesn't make it right. And the show did such a good job with is the son Anthony? Is that his name?
Yes, Anthony. Yeah.
And then Kenny is the new kid, who's that very talented actor as well. And I love the dynamic between them because it's just like, I know Harloff compares it to Star Wars, but there is a certain parallel to that. Like, you see the origin stories for these villains in Cobra Kai, and it's so good. And so, like, you see and understand why Kenny goes from this kid who just loves playing a version of Minecraft because they don't have the rights to Minecraft, and he becomes this really scary, imposing villain. But you understand why he's that way now. And Anthony isn't meant. Maybe he will do karate next season, but I like that wasn't the solution for him yet. He didn't want to wax on, wax off. He's different. He's got his own problems, and for his parents to be forced to acknowledge that, I love that the LaRussos were called out on that this season. Yeah,
the dynamic between all 4 LaRussos and the ups and downs as a family has been some really, really good writing. That they've done some really good stuff with those 4 characters. On the Kenny side of it, he's got to be the next big Cobra Kai bad, right?
Kenny I think he's gonna be a big problem. I think he's gonna rise to prominence. What is it? Is it Kevin Park, who's the guy with the swoop hair? Who's like,
the douchiest of all douchers.
He is ridiculous. I can't get enough of that guy, though. Everything he says is so funny because he thinks he's cool and he's not. And
how did he even, like, I thought he hated karate and he just like showed up one day and he was part of the dojo, right? Like,
he had FOMO. It's like a lot of the jocks started getting into karate because it was taking over the valley. That was like kind of the thing. Yeah. So I want to see more of him because he's hilarious. I don't know. I wonder who the big bad is going to be next season. It's hard to say. But I think what the show needs at this point, and not for cheap not for cheap reasons, but I think a well-timed character death would play well in next season specifically. And this is pure speculation on my part, but I think it would be a great character arc for Kreese if he passed away in the series.
It kind of would
make sense, to go out nobly in some way, not dying in battle, but like whether he,
dying for Johnny.
Yeah, like if he takes ill and goes through, like, I could see that being a really satisfying arc for Kreese at this point. And the show hasn't really dealt with death yet, other than just constantly talking about Mr. Miyagi being dead.
I will be honest. I thought that Terry Silver was poisoning him. That's what I thought.
Oh, yeah?
End. I thought he was poisoning him until...
If Terry Silver teeters into homicide, then we're on another level.
Yeah, I don't know why it popped in my head, but I was like, oh my God, are they about to kill Kreese right now? Like, I thought that they were going there. And luckily they're not. But I agree with you. I do think that at some point, like, he obviously wasn't in season 1. He came in at the very end, then he was the big foil in season 2, big part of season 3. And then 4, he obviously can't be around forever.
Right.
And it would make sense for him to maybe die the hero death, if you will, of whether it's him protecting Johnny or doing something for Johnny. Because at like the end of the season, Terry said, your weakness is Johnny. That's your weakness is Johnny Lawrence. And that's something that he'll never be able to get rid of. And if that's how it kind of comes back around, I would be okay with that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I love that now we're at the point where Terry Silver showed up and now we're in Game of Thrones territory. Like, I don't know what we're going to do.
Him and Mike Barnes together? Oh, my God.
Yeah. Mike Barnes at this point is going to be a complete like mess with a lot of male aggression. I don't see how they could bring Michael Ironside from Next Karate Kid in, but
I would love it so much, but I don't know how it would happen.
I think the biggest testament to Next Karate Kid is making it convincing that Pat Morita beat up Michael Ironside, because it's not as like crazy in the 80s movies, but when you get to 1994 and he's doing that to a man like 3 times his size. If they bring back the monks from Next Karate Kid, I'll lose it. I love the monks from Next Karate Kid. If they come back and dance to the Cranberries, I love that scene.
It feels like each season is slowly progressing its way through the movies, right? Like season 1 and season 2 was very much the first one, a little bit of the second one. Season 3, second and third. Then season 4 was very heavily on the fourth. Season 5 probably a little bit more on the third movie. And then, kind of going towards that direction of getting to the next Karate Kid. It just feels like it's going to happen. It just feels.
Oh, yeah. Now, what if they could get Walton Goggins?
See, I put that on Twitter and someone responded to me and said, screw Hilary Swank, get Walter Goggins back.
Oh, God. Like, and he's like the one in Next Karate Kid who's like, should we really be beating up this girl? There's like 5 of us.
Which is so unlike Walter Goggins, but
he's looking around. He's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
This is kind of messed up.
Yeah.
The final fight in Next Karate Kid, guys, if you haven't watched the Next Karate Kid in a while, go back and watch it. Like, because there's some insane stuff in that. Like that final fight where they are doing very illegal things. Like Julie should definitely have called the cops like 100 times in that movie because yikes. Fun fact too, Chris Conrad, who plays her love interest in that, is the Johnny Cage who gets killed right away in Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. But I just like that, I have that little martial arts connection. Between the franchises. Yeah. But I do want Hilary Swank to be brought in to kind of finish the arc for that character. They're the only 2 Miyagi students, basically, late in his life. They're the only 2. So you could imagine they would have a lot to talk about. And I think Daniel would be very interested to see that monastery where she went and did a lot of her training. I think that'd be a cool place to revisit. There's a lot of good stuff in Next Karate Kid that the showrunners could put to good use. 100%. And kind of, it's not about saying Karate Kid Part 2, 3, and Next Karate Kid are perfect movies. We've never thought that. But there's fun stuff in them, and there's a reason we keep going back to them. And Cobra Kai, I think, has solidified the legacy of all the sequels.
I agree. Interesting theory that I heard around the internet and amongst my group that kind of watches Cobra Kai. In season 4, Stingray, he's staying at his sister's house. People are theorizing that his sister could be Hilary Swank.
That would be hilarious. I You know, like she didn't really have any siblings. So it would have to be like a retcon a bit. Like she was an only child. Her parents were killed, I think, right?
Yeah,
I think
maybe he's like a half brother or something.
yeah, you could come up with a bunch of different. I mean, Egon had a secret daughter. Did you know? But yeah, I think there's a lot you could do to make it work. I love Paul Walter Hauser.
A stingray is one of my. When he showed up, I freaked out.
And as much as I love Stingray, I want. He's a talented actor. Let's give him more. Let's give him more. I want him to be more than comic relief next season. And I think because he's gone through what he went through with Terry, we're going to get that.
I hope
because he's scared to death now, and that means he's not going to just be the comic relief guy anymore.
The life of the party anymore.
Yeah. Because he's obviously a character who has a lot of emotional maturity issues, and really shouldn't be hanging out with high school kids as much as he does. I'm glad they call that out.
Party, yeah.
Yeah, but I've seen enough of that now. Let's evolve the character because it's Paul Walter Hauser. God damn it, he's a talented dude. Let's put him to use. Yeah,
just let's see a badass Stingray, not the life of the party Stingray.
Yeah.
All right, question here from EM popped in. Thank you, EM. If you had to join one dojo, which one would you join? Cobra Kai, Eagle Fang, or Miyagi-Do? I think you and I might have the same answer on this one, and it might be the unusual pick.
Me first or you?
Go ahead.
After much consideration, I would join Eagle Fang.
Same here. It's the obvious choice. Eagle Fang is the only one to this moment that has never had any massive drama as a dojo.
If I started Miyagi-Do, I would end up in Eagle Fang. So let's just jump right to it, okay?
It's the greatest dojo name of like all time. So
if Miyagi were my teacher, it'd be Miyagi-Do. If Daniel's my teacher, it's Eagle Fang. No offense, Daniel, but like enough with the speeches, man. I saw you kick the shit out of an entire hockey team. Like, be that guy.
I agree. Out of the three right now, if it was, well, I guess you can kind of say four with Kreese, Silver, Lawrence, and LaRusso, I would definitely choose Lawrence out of all of them. So
yeah, I think like Lawrence is deeply flawed. He's still got a lot of evolving to do as a human being, but he means well, and he would die for the people he loves, and he really cares about teaching kids karate. And I think it's for mostly the right reasons.
Yeah. All right. One of the last questions to kind of finish this out is maybe a little bit more on the fun side, but who would win in a fight, a suitless Boba Fett or Johnny Lawrence?
I saw a Boba Fett basically naked fighting a Wookiee. So what do you think? Like Johnny's a badass, but Johnny gets his ass kicked too.
He's like Indiana Jones, where he takes the punches.
Now, what I will say about Boba Fett, I appreciate how much of a badass he is when he's in his pajamas or naked, like fighting beasts like 10 times his size. It's great. How's the guy not get cut?
That's what I'm saying. There's no bruises, nothing. The guy's got claws. You're fighting with got claws.
Like Boba should have been scratched up after that. But I'm no less impressed, but I'm just saying, let the guy bleed a little bit because that Wookiee had him dead to rights. And it was such a great fight. I love seeing Boba pushed when he doesn't have the suit at all. And he's just got he was never more vulnerable than that moment where Black Chrysanthemum yanked him out of the tank. And he's like, well, it's on. What am I going to do?
100%.
I love his whole attitude. It's great.
Absolutely. Well, Adam, this has been an absolute joy. Talking Boba Fett, Boba Kai, drinking some whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a lot of other stuff that we have to talk about.
Future episodes,
100%. I want to get you back on for sure, whether it be The Witcher or anything else. Obviously, get Sean in here as well. Get some education on my part for The Witcher and even The Wheel of Time. But also on this whiskey part, something that I definitely never would have found. That's really why I like doing this and letting my guests kind of pick what they want, is because it's stuff that I will probably never find or have given to me just because it's so unique. We all have different tastes. We all have things that come in our area that are very different. Like you said, that's something that's new in your area for whiskey, and it's something that I actually had to search out for. So again, Puncher's Chance, everybody. Puncher's Chance bourbon. A really, really solid bourbon with a lot of different flavors going on.
So to be fair, it's bottled in Kentucky. I believe it's at least partially distilled in Oregon. But like they're pretty hardcore. They end up getting it bottled in Kentucky, so it can be traditional Kentucky bourbon.
Yeah. No, it's a great choice, and I can't appreciate it enough. And also just for joining me on the show, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. So thank you.
Be seeing you around, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we head out, do you want to plug anything, any other shows or anything that you're doing right now?
Just my Twitter and Letterboxd handle is right there for easy access. But other than that, I do my show with Video Drew every other Saturday. We'll be doing another episode on January 22nd. We'll be discussing the Scream franchise and season 1, including the new film, of course, because it'll have been out for a week by then. And season 1 of Yellow Jackets, which has become quite the hit this year. Check it out.
I have not seen it yet. It's on the list. I just like you. I catch up on a lot of TV in a certain amount of time, and I've been binging stuff like crazy lately. Oh,
it's been wonderful. Yeah. Wheel of Time's a good way to go out, though. Like I'm like, this is a good way to wind down because, it's been a whirlwind catching up on all this TV. It'll be kind of nice to get back to movies.
Agreed. 2 last comments here to wrap up the show. Andy's here. I have not tried the Star Ward yet, so Andy brought me an Australian distilled whiskey called Star Ward.
Oh, wow.
Spectacular. He brought it over from Australia.
Nice.
And that'll definitely be on one of the shows upcoming, Andy. Probably when I do solo. That way I can really break down the whiskey. And then Curtis here has how are Adam's Schmodown WWE intros going?
I'm still working on them. I'm building up a whole roster of Schmodown people in it's WWE 2K19. That was the last WWE game that came out with like a really good customization feature. And so like I've made like 24 people so far, including most of the members of Corruption and a lot of the prominent personalities, Dan Merle's in there, Paulo Yama, Lon Harris, Bibiani. I have a lot of people made. So I'm going to keep making people. But eventually I'm going to try to do like a live commentary match where we do a Royal Rumble with like 30 Schmodown personalities. Now, here, the thing that sucks is you can't mix male and female characters in that and have them fight. So the AI, the way the game's programmed, you can't do it. So I will have to have unfortunately, I have to have a separate male and female Royal Rumble. Not my call, guys. It's the game. Don't cancel me.
Don't come after him.
Yeah, but I do think it'd still be worth it to have like a Royal Rumble with all these Schmodown personalities beating up on each other, and so that's what I'm working on right now.
Perfect. That's awesome. Well, there you got. You guys got it. There's Adam Collins again. Thank you for joining me on the show. So fun having you on here.
Thanks,
everyone
Jake.
Watching. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Everyone watching the replay. Leave some comments on our thoughts on everything. Book of Boba Fett, Cobra Kai, and anything else we might have mentioned in there as well. You can find me on a certain point of view, Apocalypse Movies, and of course on Twitter. Everything is in the bio below. So again, thank you guys for joining me. We'll catch you guys next time.